The morning sun touched the peaks of the Rockies, spreading golden light across the quiet little mountain town of Pinecrest. It had always been peaceful here, the kind of place where nothing ever changed. But today, the wind carried something different. A sound Anna Woodson couldn't quite name. Part sigh, part warning. Her granddaughter, Anna Woodson, had become someone's target. They thought she was alone, easy to scare. But when 3 men closed in on her deep in the woods, they didn't count on what else was out there. A flash of wild fur, a low, bone-deep growl that made the night freeze. Then all hell broke loose. Whatever they saw made them flee, rattled to the core. Because sometimes the strongest defenders don't walk on 2 legs. This is the story of an unexpected protector, an unbreakable bond, and the day a predator drew a line between danger and the girl he claimed as his own. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget the bell so you'll never miss a new story. Morning light streamed through the curtains of Anna Woodson's small log cabin, laying soft gold lines across the faded pine floor. At 78, Anna moved with the kind of care that only comes from years of knowing her body well. Her hands, worn but steady, moved slowly as she made her tea. Just outside, the wild stretch of northern Montana rolled on endlessly, deep pine woods rising up to meet the jagged edges of the Rockies in the distance. Anna had never left Pinecrest. The town, a tight cluster of houses and old storefronts strung along a quiet highway, had once thrived when logging was big. Now it hung on thanks to tourists and the grit of those who refused to leave. "Another day," Anna said aloud, her voice light and a little musical, like she used to sing while she worked. For more than 5 decades, she'd been up before dawn to milk cows out at Henderson Dairy, just past the town's edge. Most folks her age had long given up the early mornings and hard work, trading it in for porch swings or retirement down south. But Anna had stuck with it well into her 70s, only stopping when her eyesight made the long walks too risky. A knock at the door cut through her thoughts. Anna leaned forward, squinting through her glasses as she made her way slowly to the front. The younger people in Pinecrest often checked in on her, dropping off groceries or just saying hello. She appreciated the kindness, even if she didn't like the idea of needing help. She valued her independence too much. "Morning, Mrs. Woodson," called Jack Turner, flashing a crooked grin from her porch. He cradled something wrapped in a flannel shirt. Jack was well known in Pinecrest, good tracker, sharp shot, but his morals didn't always stay on the straight path. His dad had been the same, always working an angle, always a step ahead of the rules when the game wardens weren't around. "What brings you here so early, Jack?" Anna asked, keeping one hand on the frame of the door. "Found this little guy out near Blackwater Ridge yesterday," he said, adjusting the bundle. "Rare type of mountain cat. People shell out a lot for one of these as pets. Thought maybe you'd like it." The bundle shifted, and Anna saw the tips of tiny ears and a small face with fierce amber eyes. "A kitten?" she asked, her tone softening just a bit. Since her husband William had passed 7 years ago, the cabin had felt emptier than she liked. Her daughter lived far away in Chicago, and even though Maria had come back last year to teach at the school, the house still got too quiet sometimes. "Not just any kitten," Jack said with a smirk. "This one's rare, special, worth a good chunk of change, but it needs someone who'll take care of it right. Normally I'd charge more, but for you, Mrs. Woodson, since you've always been decent to me, I'll let it go for $300. Anna paused. $300 was nearly half her monthly Social Security check. Even with the little pension she still received from the dairy, things were always tight. "Just look at those eyes," he said, gently pulling the flannel back. "You ever seen a house cat with eyes like that? This one's rare. My cousin out in Idaho breeds them." The kitten gave a soft meow, and something shifted in Anna's chest. It looked right at her, curious but calm, like it somehow understood. "I can give you $200, she said after a moment. "That's all I can manage right now." Jack's grin stretched wider. "For you, Mrs. Woodson, that'll work just fine." 20 minutes later, Anna was in her rocking chair, the kitten gently exploring her lap with quiet, careful steps. She'd handed over all the cash she had in the house, which meant she'd need to stretch what food she had until her next check. Still, when she looked down at the little creature, she didn't regret it. "What should I call you?" she asked, running her fingers over its soft, spotted coat. It was bigger than most kittens she'd known, with chunky paws and thick tufts on its ears. Its fur was a rich, tawny color, and those golden eyes felt almost wise. The kitten let out a sound that was somewhere between a purr and a chirp. "Well, you've got a lot to say," Anna chuckled. "How about Mick? That's what William used to call our old tomcat. Said he was always stirring up trouble." The kitten chirped again and gently nudged her hand, like he approved. Over the next few weeks, Anna and Mick found a rhythm. The kitten grew fast, eating more than she expected, and always seemed hungry. Unlike the other cats she'd had before, Mick refused most store-bought food. "You're a fussy one," Anna told him one afternoon, watching as he tore into a strip of raw venison a neighbor had dropped off. "And you're growing like nothing I've ever seen." She glanced at him as he licked his chops. "What kind of cat did Jack say you were again?" Mick didn't answer, but the low, steady rumble of his purr filled the room like distant thunder. As time went on, Anna grew more puzzled and a little uneasy. By 3 months in, Mick was far bigger than any house cat she'd ever raised. His paws looked oversized for his frame, and his behavior was getting stranger. He could leap onto the top of the fridge without effort. He prowled the cabin at night, restless, and sometimes made sounds that didn't sound anything like a meow. "Grandma, you home?" Maria's voice floated in from the porch one cool Saturday morning in early fall. "Come in, dear," Anna called, setting aside her mending. Maria stepped inside, bringing the crisp scent of fall with her, along with that vibrant energy that always seemed to lift the cabin. After finishing college in Boston and teaching for a few years in Denver, she had finally come back, saying she missed the mountains and the people who felt like home. "I brought you some—" Maria stopped suddenly, her gaze landing on Mick, who was stretched out in front of the fireplace. Her eyes went wide. "Grandma," she said slowly. "What is that?" "That's Mick," Anna said with a proud smile. "He's my new cat. Jack Turner sold him to me a few months ago. Said he was some rare kind of house cat." Maria took a step closer, staring hard at the animal. Alarm flickered in her voice. "Grandma, that's not a regular cat. I think that's a lynx." "A what now?" "A lynx," Maria said firmly. "A wild one. They're native to this area, but they're protected. That means it's illegal to keep one. Grandma, we need to report this." She pulled out her phone and quickly brought up pictures. "Look, see the ear tufts, the short tail, the huge paws? That's a Canada lynx." Anna adjusted her glasses, then looked from the phone to Mick and back again. The similarity was impossible to deny. "Oh, dear," she whispered. Suddenly, all of Mick's strange behavior made sense. "Jack Turner told me it was just a rare house cat." "He lied to you," Maria said, her voice tightening. "He probably killed the mother and sold you the cub. Grandma, this is serious. We have to call wildlife services." Anna looked down at Mick, who had woken and was watching them with those sharp amber eyes. He stretched slowly, then patted over and rubbed against her legs, his deep purring filling the room like a soft hum. "No," Anna said gently, but with resolve. "What do you mean, no?" Maria asked, stunned. "Grandma, you can't keep a wild lynx in your home." "He's not wild, not anymore," Anna said, running her hand over Mick's head. "I've raised him since he was just a baby. He's kind. He listens. He's never hurt a soul." "That's not the issue," Maria said, her voice rising slightly. "It's not just about behavior. It's against the law, and it's not fair to him either. Wild animals need the wild." Anna looked up, her face lined with worry. Where would they take him? Probably to a rehab center, where they'd try to help him return to the wild. But Grandma, he's already halfway grown. If he stays with you much longer, he might not stand a chance out there. Anna's hand trembled a little as she kept petting him. "He's all I have most days," she said in a quiet voice. "Since your grandfather passed." Her voice drifted off. Maria's face softened. She knelt beside her grandmother and gently took her hand. "I get it. I really do. But this isn't just some lost kitten. This is a wild species, protected by law." Just then, Mick stood on his hind legs, placing his front paws on Anna's knees. He looked up at her and gave a soft chirp before nudging her chin with his head. Anna's eyes filled with tears. "Look at him, Maria. He trusts me. He loves me?" Maria stared at the moment, torn between concern and awe. The connection between them was real. It was also clear that this animal had bonded to Anna. "Let me do some checking," Maria said at last. "There might be a way, maybe something like registering him as a rescue. But, Grandma, you have to keep this between us. If word gets out, it could cause real trouble." In the weeks that followed, Maria dug into wildlife laws while Anna went on caring for Mick. The lynx was growing fast and strong. At 6 months, he weighed close to 30 pounds and could leap to the top of the bookshelf in a blink. But no matter how big he got, Mick stayed gentle with Anna, always calm, always careful. He curled up at the foot of her bed every night, and during the day he followed her around like a silent little shadow. Eventually, Maria found something. The laws did forbid keeping native lynx, but in rare situations, like hand-raised animals that couldn't survive alone, permits could sometimes be granted. "I spoke with a wildlife biologist at the university in Missoula," she told Anna. "In some cases, they allow animals like Mick to stay in human care, as educational ambassadors. But we'd need to prove he wouldn't survive in the wild. And we'd have to get him proper vet care, register everything, and maybe let him be part of public programs." Anna didn't hesitate. "Whatever it takes, I'm not giving him up." As fall slipped into winter, Mick kept growing, but also adjusted well to his new space. With Maria's help, Anna added a sturdy outdoor enclosure to the cabin, giving him fresh air and room to stretch his legs safely. Surprisingly, Mick seemed to understand the space was his. Even when the gate was left open, he never wandered far. What really surprised them both was Mick's habit of joining them on their forest walks. The first time it happened, Maria panicked, thinking he'd run off into the wild and never come back. But instead, he kept his distance, staying just within sight. Sometimes he vanished into the brush, only to reappear a few minutes later, as if he was making sure they were still safe. "It's like he's watching over us," Maria said, watching him glide down a tree like it was nothing. "He acts like we're the ones who need protection." Anna chuckled, leaning on her cane. "He knows we're family." By the time spring came around, Mick had become a beloved but well-kept secret in their home. Only a few trusted friends even knew he existed, and all had promised to stay quiet while Maria worked through the process of getting official permission. But it was also that spring when things started to go wrong in Pinecrest. At first, the signs were small. Late-night music thumped from the old Tanner place at the edge of town, and folks at the diner whispered about customers who mouthed off to the servers. It didn't take long for the town to figure out what had changed. Kyle Tanner had moved into his grandfather's place, bringing 3 buddies from the city with him. All 4 were in their mid-20s, jobless, and clearly didn't care much for the quiet ways of Pinecrest. "They're just young men blowing off steam," Anna said when Maria brought it up. "Give them time, they'll settle down." But as the weeks went by, things didn't improve. They got worse. People started talking about trespassing, a few odd fires out in the woods, and more than one woman mentioned being followed or harassed while out walking alone. Warnings were given, but nothing changed. It was a Thursday in late May when Maria took her usual route home from school, cutting through the community park. As she neared the picnic tables by the path, she spotted Kyle and two of his friends slouched there. She gripped her bag a little tighter and kept walking, hoping they'd ignore her. "Well, look who it is," Kyle called out, his words slurred just enough to make her stomach twist. Maria picked up her pace, but Kyle hopped down and stepped right into her path. "Why the rush?" he said, grinning through a chipped front tooth. "Come have a drink with us." "No, thank you," Maria said, her voice firm. "I'm just heading home." One of the others moved behind her, blocking her way out. "Don't be like that," he said. "We're just being friendly." "Please move," Maria said, trying to stay calm. "I'm not interested." Kyle stepped closer, his expression changing. "You think you're better than us, huh? Just like the rest of this stuck-up town." The park was empty, no one nearby. Her mind raced, running through what she'd learned in that old self-defense class, wondering if she could make a break for it. Out of the brush near the edge of the park, a blur of golden-brown fur shot forward. A sound erupted, something raw, somewhere between a snarl and a scream. It cut through the air like a blade. Mick landed squarely between Maria and Kyle, his back arched. He looked twice his size. Teeth bared, he growled, low and deep, vibrating the ground beneath them. Kyle staggered back in shock, eyes wide. "Is that a freaking mountain lion?" The lynx crept forward, every movement tense and ready to strike. One of the men yelped, turned, and took off, tripping over himself in his panic. "Get back!" shouted the third, still frozen by the tables. "Those things are dangerous." Kyle stood frozen, pale and sweating, then finally snapped out of it and bolted, stumbling as he ran full speed away from the animal that looked like it had come straight from his nightmares. Maria didn't move. Her breath was stuck somewhere in her chest. Mick stood tall in front of her, still as a statue, his sharp gaze locked on the fading figures of the men. When they were gone, he turned to her, and in a heartbeat, the fierce protector became the companion she knew so well. He chirped softly and nuzzled against her legs. "Mick," she whispered, falling to her knees and wrapping her arms around him, hands shaking from the rush of fear and relief. "How did you even know? How did you find me?" Of course there was no answer, but the steady hum of his purr began to pull her back to calm. Somehow, though it made no sense, he had followed her. Or maybe he'd always been watching from the woods, just out of sight. The two of them made their way back toward the cabin, Maria glancing over her shoulder every few steps, half expecting Kyle to come storming back. But the forest stayed quiet, filled only with the wind and the distant call of birds. Anna was sitting on the porch, her knitting set aside. Her eyes lit up when she saw them. "There you are. I was starting to get worried. Mick vanished right after lunch. I couldn't find him anywhere." Maria climbed the steps, dropped into the chair beside her grandmother, and let out a long breath. Maria recounted what had happened in the park, her voice still shaky from the memory. As she spoke, Anna's expression moved from worry to quiet anger, then finally to a look of fierce pride. "He protected you," Anna said when Maria finished, "like any family would." "But, Grandma, this makes things more complicated," Maria replied. "They saw him. Kyle and his friends are going to talk." Anna's chin lifted. "Let 'em. What they did, cornering you like that, is worse than us keeping an unusual pet. And maybe now they'll think twice before bothering anyone else around here." Word spread through Pinecrest fast, faster than wildfire, as small-town stories tend to do. By the next morning, Anna's phone rang nonstop with neighbors calling to check on Maria and ask about the so-called mountain lion that had come to her rescue. Kyle and his friends, meanwhile, had gone quiet. After Maria filed a report, the sheriff paid them a visit. Rumors flew that the boys were planning to leave town, calling Pinecrest weird and hostile. No one seemed too sorry to see them go. A week after it all happened, Anna opened her front door to find Sheriff Dan Hadley on the porch, holding his hat in his hands. She'd known him since he was a kid running through these woods. "Mrs. Woodson," he said, looking uncomfortable, "I need to talk to you about a lynx." Anna stepped aside and waved him in. There was no use pretending. Mick was already sitting tall on the hearthrug, calm and steady, watching the sheriff without blinking. "Well," the sheriff said after a pause, "I've heard some strange things lately. Honestly, I didn't believe half of it. Until now." "He's been with me since he was tiny," Anna said. "I didn't know what he was at first. By the time Maria figured it out, he was already part of my life." The sheriff gave a slow nod. "I figured Jack Turner had something to do with this." Anna looked down. "I don't want any trouble." "You're not the problem here," the sheriff said. "Poaching is a whole other matter." He looked over at Mick. "I've never seen anything like him. It's like he knows exactly what's being said." "He's special," Anna said quietly. Sheriff Hadley ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Technically, I'm supposed to report this. That's how it works." "And will you?" Maria asked from the doorway. She had just gotten home and had heard enough to jump in. The sheriff was silent for a moment. "Kyle Tanner and his pals have been causing problems for a while now. I've been waiting for something solid to stick. What happened at the park, that was the line they crossed." He looked at Maria. "But before I could step in, your four-legged friend here did it for me. Word is, they're packing up and heading back to wherever they came from." Then he turned back to Mick, still sitting tall and calm by the fire. "I think," the sheriff said, choosing his words carefully, "that any official look into strange wildlife sightings might have to wait. I've got more urgent things to handle, and that could take a while. In the meantime, Mrs. Woodson, I'd appreciate it if you and Maria kept working on getting the right permits, for education purposes. I've heard the Nature Center's outreach programs do real good work." Anna's eyes filled, her voice soft. "We're already on it." "Good," Sheriff Hadley said with a nod. "And thank you both for everything you bring to this town." After he left, Anna settled down next to Mick and gently stroked his fur. "You hear that?" she said with a smile. "You're part of this town now, too." In the months that followed, Mick's story became Pinecrest legend. With the sheriff's quiet support and the community's help, Anna and Maria secured the permits they needed. Mick officially became an ambassador animal. As for Kyle Tanner and his crew, they did leave, without a fuss. Their exit was quietly celebrated, and folks seemed lighter afterward. The story of the nearly blind woman and her unlikely protector became a favorite local tale, growing grander with every retelling. Mick was soon credited with every kind of heroism, from chasing off bears to saving hikers. But for Anna, who was nearing her 80th birthday, none of that mattered as much as the quiet comfort of having Mick by her side. And on peaceful evenings, as they sat together on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the trees, she'd often whisper, "You were meant to find me." Sitting on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the mountains, Anna often thought about the strange twists that had brought this incredible animal into her life. Sometimes, she told Maria one crisp autumn afternoon as they watched Mick circle the edge of the yard, "What starts out looking like a mistake turns out to be the biggest blessing." Maria smiled, her eyes following the graceful figure moving through the tall grass. She thought of that frightened little cub, how far he'd come, how much he'd given them. "And sometimes," she said quietly, "the ones we think we're saving end up saving us." Mick paused, hearing their voices. He turned toward them, his amber eyes catching the last rays of sunlight. Then, with the smooth, effortless motion that always seemed to leave them both in awe, he bounded back to the porch. the quiet guardian of two Woodson women. Proof that the strongest bonds often grow in the most unexpected ways. Out in the woods beyond Pinecrest, stories began to spread. Whispers of a watchful presence that kept the village safe. Kids who wandered too far sometimes claimed they saw glowing eyes or a flash of fur right before they found their way home. Lost hikers swore they'd heard strange cries guiding them to safety when storms came in too fast. And in the little cabin near the trees, an elderly woman who'd spent a lifetime working hard and asking for little found unexpected joy and purpose in her later years, thanks to the wild soul who chose to stay beside her. If this story meant something to you, we'd love for you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Help us keep these stories alive, because sometimes the ones we least expect become the ones we'll never forget. We'll never forget. We'll never forget.